I introduce our speaker today, just some organizational issues. For all medical students, for the Wahlfachtrag, please sign here. And there's also news that our sessions, also in German, ihr könnt euch unsere Sessions auch im MEDIS-Programm anrechnen lassen. Dazu müsst ihr aber 5-mal kommen. Das heißt, das nächste Semester dann auch nochmal. Und da gibt es ja diesen Laufzettel, glaube ich, den ihr euch da runterladen könnt, mit dem müsst ihr dann zu uns kommen, dann kriegt ihr eine Stelle von uns. Ich glaube, ihr seid eine Mediziner, ja.
Gut, 5 wissenschaftliche Vorträge in einem von diesen OEs oder so einem dieser
Genau. Also ich glaube, Wintersemester haben wir noch unsere Sozietät-Sessions, die sind dann 2 Stunden, das sind so Art Workshops, auch hier. Und da müssen wir auch noch mal gucken, dass wir die auch irgendwie anrechnen lassen können. Aber ich denke schon, da müssen wir auch mit dem Team Rücksprache halten. Okay, that's for the organizational part. Michael, welcome, and thank you for being here despite train cancellations of the Deutsche Bahn. We all know that. I'd just like to give you all a short background from Maika. She is from law. She holds a master's in law from the University of Amsterdam, and she's also got extensive training in pharmaceutical business development, licensing, marketing, and commercialization of pharmaceuticals. And currently, she's not only enrolled in the Master of Science in Global Health Policy from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She's an associate counsel at Unit 8 and Medicine Patent Pool. And today, Michael will tell us if patent pooling and voluntary licensing will increase the access to life-saving medicines. You have the floor.
Hello, thank you for being here, and thank you for the kind presentation. So we're going to talk about the Medicines Patent, which is an organization based in Geneva, and we do, as has been said, patent pooling for access purposes. So I think, first of all, I mean, every organization will have a mission and a vision. So the mission of the Medicines Patent Pool is to increase access to and facilitate the development of life-saving medicines for low and middle-income countries through voluntary licensing and patent pooling. And the vision of the organization is a world in which people in need in low and middle-income countries have rapid access to effective and affordable medical treatment and health technologies. So we work with a different range of partners and stakeholders who are based in Geneva, and we are fully funded as until now by UNITAID, which is kind of a UN agency that is hosted in WHO. It doesn't have a different legal personality than WHO, but it's a group of countries that have created this organization, and they are financing different projects in health and in access to medicines. So we are going to talk a lot about patents. I'm a lawyer, so if you don't understand anything, because sometimes we use this technical language, you just let me know. I guess we may be familiar with what a patent is. Sorry? Oh, yes. Okay. Do you want me to press the button? Yeah, maybe? Yes? So, yes. So as I said, I mean, to put the Medicines Patent Pool in context, we need to think about a scenario of created by an agreement that is called the TRIPS agreement. I don't know if it's familiar to all of you. So we have the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, and which is an international organization with almost 200 countries that has several agreements in place. And if you want to join the WTO, be a member, have good conditions on trade with other countries, you need to implement certain laws and certain legislations in your own, in your own country. So there is this, the WTO was created in 1995, and one of the agreements that countries need to accept and implement is an agreement on intellectual property rights. And what this agreement is making is kind of extant. It's like imposing, between brackets, exporting the intellectual property system of developed countries to developing countries. So you have a situation where most of the companies that innovate are in high-income countries. And those companies, as a reward for the innovation, the country gives them a patent right, which is a legal monopoly to practice that invention and to exclude others from practicing that invention. So this taken to the pharmaceutical field is when we talk about pharmaceutical patents. New medications that are developed are given patent rights, and during 20 years of the patent protection, only the inventor or the owner of the patent can work that patent and obviously produce that medication. So what happens? We have very expensive drugs, right, and medicines, and there are some countries that have a lack of access to medicines because there is a high level of property over pharmaceutical products. So in this context, in 2010, there was a request of the international community to create a kind of mechanism to try to deal with this situation. Meaning there is a need for newer treatments for developing countries. Those treatments are available in high-income countries, but they are too expensive for developing countries. So how can we manage this? So one of the solutions that was created is the medicines patent pool. And what we do, I'm gonna play a video to show you a little bit what we do, and then I will explain more in detail. So let's go to YouTube.
The Medicines Patent Pool is working to improve access to HIV, hepatitis C, and tuberculosis medicines in low and middle income countries through a voluntary licensing and patent pooling model. This is how it works. Disease experts, civil society, patient groups, and the World Health Organization help MPP identify treatment needs and prioritize medicines. MPP signs voluntary licensing agreements with patent holders for these medicines and then licenses rights to manufacture affordable versions to generic companies. MPP's licenses include public health terms and conditions that seek to benefit up to 130 countries, all low-income nations, and 50 to 80% of middle-income economies. Licenses are non-exclusive to encourage generic competition. They are transparent and published on the MPP website. Importantly, MPP's licenses allow manufacturers to combine different medicines to produce fixed-dose combinations and special formulations for children. Technology transfer helps ease eventual registration. As a result, new treatments become available faster in developing countries. Generic competition brings prices down and more people gain access to the medicines they need.
So this is, with this video, I guess the presentation could be done. But well, so I'm gonna just go to the next slide. And
Go in the presentation mode.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, yes, so we were created in 2010 and initially working only for HIV. Now we have an expansion of our mandate into hepatitis C, tuberculosis, and other diseases. I will tell you a bit more about this later. And as I said, it works by addressing the key challenges in medicines access by patent sharing and technology transfer. So This is how we work. So we have patent holders, which is basically, which is mainly big pharmaceutical companies, originators, and we approach them and we negotiate with them license agreements that include a sub-license form. And then we look for generic companies so they can sign that sub-license with us to create generic authorized versions of the patented medication. In some cases, there are royalties that go back from generic manufacturers to originators. But in other cases, there's no royalties, depending on the kind of license and whether there is a pediatric formulation. Usually for pediatric formulations, there's no royalties back that go back to the originator. And then those medications are distributed in low and middle income countries. This was a video, but it didn't work, so this is the other one. So the objectives of the MPP is to accelerate the availability of the generic versions of these new treatments. And there is something that is very important as well, which is the enabling the development of fixed-dose combinations, especially when there are patents held by different companies over different molecules and compounds. And also we seek to encourage the development of formulations for children, because I guess most of you already know that there is not a market incentive for developing formulations for specific formulations of HIV drugs for children, because there's not any longer any kids in developed countries that live with HIV. So this is specifically important for developed countries. And what we try to do is to benefit all the stakeholders, and this is why we have, on the one hand, the patent holders. We want to, every time that we approach them, we try to convince them to negotiate with us, because we believe that this could be a very effective way for them to bring their new medications to resource-poor settings, and also somehow we can help them with all the license managing and also with their social corporate responsibility programs and so on. So on the other hand, we have the generic manufacturers, the low-cost producers, that they see the MPP as a simplified approach to the development of affordable versions of existing medicines. And also, we try to encourage them to produce these new formulations, especially for kids, and fix those combinations. On the other hand, we have also the governments and the treatment providers, the procurement agencies. So they are able to make the most of the budgets, because they will have obviously more affordable medications. Instead of paying higher prices to the originator, they can buy generic versions of these medications. And obviously, at the end of the day, we try to benefit patients and the communities, and by gaining greater access to quality, appropriate, and affordable treatments. So do you have any question or comment so far?
Yes, you go first.
Just a clarification so that maybe I don't get confused with the rest of the presentation. It's like you mentioned that it's voluntary.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Who specifically are the patent holders? Is it just universities and laboratories, or somebody else?
Yes, there are mainly big pharma innovators. I will show you a slide of all the innovators that we have, but also some universities as well.
And do you also get competition from big pharmaceutical companies who want to buy the patent and just leave it there somewhere in their archives so that the medicine never gets produced or something?
Yes, patents are territorial rights. Right? In each jurisdiction, you have to go to each country to get the patent right. Once you get it, you have this exclusive monopoly, you are supposed to be working the patent. Otherwise, the patent expires after a certain amount of time. But you can work the patent directly yourself as the patent holder, or you can give away licenses for somebody else to use it, to work on it. There is this, patents are given as a social contract and as a reward for innovation. So the social contract is, okay, you innovate, you apply for a patent, that technology is published because patents are published, and this becomes the, knowledge that becomes part of the state of the art, so to say. So, but then there is a process, and if the patent is granted, then you as the patent holder has this exclusive right to use it during 20 years. In exchange for all, the innovation and the research and development and the costs. So you can somehow compensate, for all those. But the problem is that if you have a patent in a country, nobody else can produce that drug, and the company itself is producing that drug, but is obviously the only producer and setting the price, and they can fix the price basically as they want, because no competition. So that is a problem in many countries, not only developing countries, also in high-income countries, but well.
Yeah, there was a time before there were patents.
Yes.
And if I look, this is maybe, well, is it a burst effect of a patent pool, because you are kind of protecting this approach of having patents? Otherwise, you would not benefit
We
all.
wouldn't have a business model, right?
Yeah. So maybe this comes out later. That this is a strategy. Others would say, why not for a life-saving drug? Why not abolish it in the first place and have other returns of investment? But anyway, before we start discussion,
there's a lot of
but I
talks,
want
and
to
it's
Let's
true.
get going.
Yes, and there is another question.
Just ask, what's the difference in between, like you mentioned the TRIPS agreement?
Yes.
And in the TRIPS agreements, if there's a certain public health need in a country, for example, Egypt, where about, I think, 15 to 20% of people are hepatitis C positive, there's the option of doing compulsory licensing.
Yes.
So the country says, okay, for our country, we don't agree with the patent, we say, okay, we produce it ourselves, we don't accept the patent, and that's actually possible under the TRIPS
Yes,
agreement.
absolutely.
What's the advantage of doing voluntary licensing?
Well,
Just saying, okay, we will do it.
yes, there are many issues. Compulsory licenses is a true flexibility, something that is totally legal, but it's a bit controversial. It's true. There's a lot of discussions, because at the end of the day, you are expropriating, the government is expropriating a patent right, a property right, and saying, you company, you have this exclusive right, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to authorize this and this to work on it, because your price is too high. So compulsory licenses are sometimes more effective as a mechanism to try to reduce prices, more than, to really issue the compulsory licenses. There are many examples, even here in Germany. I think there was one example with Merck, with an HIV treatment. There was a compulsory license granted, but it's an issue. And then there is another thing. You can grant a compulsory license and you say, okay, the patent is not blocking anymore, right? Because if the patent is in the issue, you can grant this compulsory license, but then you have the regulatory approval, the regulatory path. And the dossier, the registration dossier of a medication has also some property between brackets rights, has some data exclusivity protection, so you need authorization of the patent of the pharmaceutical company, because a generic has to rely on all the clinical data from the innovator. And that is not addressed with a compulsory license. So you may be in a situation where you don't have any longer a patent that is blocking, but the generic is trying to register that medication to be authorized, to be placed in the market, but they don't have the authorization from the owner of that data, from the pharmaceutical company that has developed all this clinical data, to have the drug approved as a generic. It's really, it made itself another.
But maybe let's go further and then we come back to that, because
maybe we can.
that point is very valid, and we have many para patent mechanisms nowadays. I think the pharma industry could survive nowadays even without patents, with all the other provisions.
This is not what they say.
Well, they want all patents.
Yes. Okay, but we can continue. I mean, this is the MPP's path. Since its creation to 2018, we were working in HIV, then we expanded to hepatitis C, and we studied in 2017 the possibility to extend this business model to other medicines, not only to communicable diseases. And we have a plan to do that. I can come to that a bit later. So those are some of the what we can achieve by the MPP licenses, which is to have multiple quality assured suppliers of the medication, which are the generic manufacturers, faster availability of generics, obviously lower prices, with new fixed dose combinations, market clarity, and enhanced technological capacity, and what it's supposed to be beneficial. You know, this sharing of technology and of patents is supposed to be something that is beneficial for many different stakeholders. So the key features of our licenses, our mandate is all low and middle income countries. So we try to get as many countries as possible into the licenses that we negotiate. Again, the flexibility to combine different compounds from different pharmaceutical companies into a single pill, into a single tablet. We always seek, when we request generics to have WHO pre-qualification or another stringent regulatory authority qualification, regulatory approval of those drugs. So the quality is good, is high. They are non-exclusive in the sense that we give away, I mean, there's no exclusivity. We don't have only one licensee. We seek to have many, so they can compete with each other and lower the prices. It's compatible with other access policies, like for example, with TRIPS flexibilities, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about this in the next slides. There is a public disclosure in the licenses of all the patents that affect those compounds that are in the license. All the contracts, all the licenses are published in our webpage. So, I mean, usually pharmaceutical companies, they deal with each other. You never know the terms and conditions of those agreements because they are confidential. So in this case, everything is in our webpage. This is a key principle of the medicines patent pool. And then we have something that I think is very interesting. Once we sign the license, we don't put it in a drawer, you know, and forget about it. We have quarterly meetings with the manufacturers to know how they are developing and how they are selling, and we go back to the originator and tell them how things are progressing, how many countries are being supplied, how many doses of the medications are being sold, and so on. So we really monitor compliance with the obligations of the license. So far, the video was a bit old. We have 13 antiretrovirals and one technology platform. This is with the University of Liverpool, some nanotechnology applicable to antiretrovirals. We have 3 hepatitis C treatments and 1 tuberculosis treatment. And then we have 23 generic manufacturers. This is in the next slide. They are developing 130 projects. I mean, projects is not any, how to define project? I mean, every company, they can develop like like different the different formulations that they are developing is a project. So this is why there's so many by each company. And the countries is 136 countries. They have already benefit from those treatments, and those are the savings that are supposed that we are getting to the public health community, basically to procurement agencies, to treatment programs, and because obviously those medications they are being developed by the generics, and they are much cheaper than the innovator price, much cheaper. It's like an 80% of cost reduction in the price, so it really makes a difference. Those are the innovators that we have, the partnership with them. I mean, this is the people that gives the license to us, that have developed all these medications that are protected by patents. So we have many of the companies, I guess they may be familiar to you, because it's AbbVie, Gilead, ViiV, BMS, MSD, which is Merck, Janssen, and yes. And those are the producers, which are 23 companies. Most of them are based in India, but some of them they are also based in China, and there is another one, I believe in Bangladesh. So yes, and let me see what I have here. Yeah, we can put an example, for example, with the Voluntary, which is very good medication for HIV that has been recommended by WHO. And this medication was developed by ViiV Healthcare, and it was approved in 2013 by the regulatory agency in the US, by the US FDA. And what this graphic tells us is that in basically 5 years from regulatory approval in the US and high-income countries, we have already generics approved for developing countries, and this medication is under patent protection. I think it's until 2026, something like that. So, in a scenario without a license over this IP, you would have to wait until 2023, 2024. I would need to check the patent expiry date. So you would have to wait for generics to develop and place in the market. But with this authorization from the patent holder through a contract, through a license for developing countries, what you have is people benefiting from the same treatment as in high-income countries, which is good, which is what it should be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can simply say, because for the first round of antiretrovirals in the developing countries, it took more than a decade to get there. And dolutegravir is now in the WHO guidelines, so it's actually been introduced as first line. So it's really true that the turnover and the availability in this case is really comparatively rapid. So it's the first time that the same first line treatment is recommended in the US and in Europe and in Malawi. Yeah. In that way, it's really a success. Although there are still some doubts on the pregnant women.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a very important curve.
So yes, this is and also regarding dolutegravir, this is the geographical scope of the license. So we have in very dark blue the countries within the license, and then in lighter blue we have countries without granted patents on dolutegravir, where generic sale is permitted under the license because we specifically mentioned this in the contract. So what we try to do is not to do any harm to countries outside the territory, because there are some countries that, at the end of the day, we depend on the willingness of the big pharma companies to give us specific countries or not. I mean, this is they are the owners of the IP, and they decide the terms and conditions on which they want to license these drugs to us. So we always fight for a wide geographical scope, and we always try to include as well a provision that says, okay, this is the geographical scope, but if there is a country outside the territory, as the geographical scope that we have agreed with you, that doesn't have a patent granted and enforced, our licenses can sell outside the territory as well. So this is very good because you can go to other countries outside the territory, and it's something that has a clear benefit with the countries. Argentina, for example, is a middle-income country. It's very difficult to include in the licenses because there are people that have the money to pay for these medications. But in this case, Argentina didn't grant yet any patent on dolutegravir. It must be under process. It can take maybe 5, 6 years, 7 to be granted. So in the meantime, you can sell dolutegravir to Argentina as well, even though, I mean, our licenses can sell to Argentina. So this is something that is good. So before, I mean, this is sparing expansion, but maybe we can discuss now any other issue, or if you have any other question.
For me, it would be the time that I
Yes.
usually to speak about. Yeah, I would love to be more in discussion, but we will be in touch. Yeah.
No problem. It's only like 5 slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, okay.
So yes, I mean this model was considered to be successful, and for HIV and hepatitis C and tuberculosis, and this is why the WHO suggested that this MPP model should be used for another disease areas, not only for these communicable diseases. So we got some money from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation to perform a feasibility study to apply our model to what is called essential medicines list of WHO, which are medications that the WHO recommends countries to give to their citizens. So the findings of this feasibility study were that there is a public health need for access to new patented medicines beyond HIV, hepatitis C, and tuberculosis in low and middle-income countries, and that accelerating access to these medicines, like for example for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer, could contribute to improving public health outcomes and reduce morbidity and mortality. And that the MPP could play an important role in addressing this as well as antimicrobial resistance by facilitating access to and good stewardship of new antibiotics. So this is why that the MPP board, we have a governance board, decided and agreed to expand the mandate of the MPP beyond these treatment areas. And we are gonna make from now on a phased expansion, initially to small molecules listed in the WHO model list of essential medicines, as well as other medicines that may have a potential for inclusion in these lists. And this is going to be obviously with respect to medicines that are under patent, not to medicines that are off patent. Because if they are off patent, anybody can produce them, so there's no problems with IP issues. So, yes, this is the targets that we have for by 2022. More than 20 million people with HIV and low and middle-income countries are treated with the MPP licensed antiretrovirals. Sorry, I think I forgot. Also for hepatitis C, we are going to try to reduce the treatment to $50 per person per yes, by quality assured suppliers in obviously these licensed countries. With respect to hepatitis C, I don't know if you have heard about the Sovaldi case, the Gilead case, the high prices of the treatment in the US, like this was, I think this happened like 3-4 years ago. And the hepatitis C was an incurable disease, basically. So Gilead, that is one of our licensors, came up with this amazing treatment that was curing people, but they were selling it at, I think it was 3 months of treatment for $90,000 US dollars. So it was really outrageous, and because of this price, the debate of access and of high prices of medicines started to be an issue also in high-income countries, not only in developing countries. So thanks to Gilead, we are now talking in Europe about prices of medicines and high prices of medicines, and well, so we didn't get a license from Gilead, but we got 2 very good treatments from BMS and from AbbVie for hepatitis C, and the aim is to get to this price. Generics are already working on it, and for TB, there's a very complicated illness. The current treatment is very long, and it requires injections, and it has a very low successful rate. So we are working on developing. We're working with originators and licensees to try to develop a shorter regimen for developing countries as well, and also going back to the expansion into other disease areas. We are planning on getting a license this year over diabetes or cancer. We will see, or cardiovascular disease. We are still working with pharmaceutical companies to see which license can be available for us. And the fifth issue, which is MedSpal, is a database that we have over medications and information about patents. But this would require, a totally different presentation, because it's another thing that we do, and I don't want to get into that because otherwise we're going to be really out of time. So, how are we going to contribute how is the MPP, which is, by the way, is a very small organization. We are only 22 people, and we are based in Geneva. We have a small office in India. So we are very tiny, and how we are going to contribute to these huge targets that the international community is setting. So we will try, we know that UNAIDS is trying to get to 30 million people under treatment by 2025, and to end AIDS by 2030. So this is a very, very challenging scenario. And what is the MPP going to try to do? Well, we are going to try to keep on working, with licensors and licensees to get all these generics and to give treatment to as many people as possible, and to try also to bring in other formulations that may be developed, and also some pre-exposure prophylaxis treatments that are supposed to be extremely good in preventing new infections. So we will be working on that. Let's see if we are able to succeed. For hepatitis C, there is a WHO goal to eliminate viral hepatitis C as a major public health threat by 2030, and to reduce Hep C infections by 80% and deaths by 65% by 2030, I believe. So we will try to get all these cheaper treatments as well into the field, and to contribute to this target. And for tuberculosis, there is also some WHO and some UN SDG development goals, and to try to reduce deaths of TB by 95% up until 2035, and to end tuberculosis by 2030. So yes, we will try also to work together with WHO to see whether new regimens can be developed as generics. So there is also, well, now I guess because you are all medical students and you all are studying in global health issues, there is big discussions going on about universal health coverage in WHO. This is the DG, Dr. Tedros has this aim of trying to bring all countries in the world to implement this universal health coverage in their own, for their own citizens, and obviously we expand to other disease areas, which is, we have already expanded, but if we get other licenses, the idea is to try to get cheaper treatments for governments to buy. So they have cheaper alternatives, which is always good. So we will be also aiming to collaborate in this, which I think is an amazing challenge, but also absolutely necessary. And yes, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Monica, thank you very, very much for these interesting presentations. Are there any questions from the audience? Didn't we have a discussion topic somewhere there?
I think we can come back to that question, because you depend on the collaboration of pharma, and they will calculate very, very clearly when they collaborate with you and when not, and very often they do not. Yeah. So, what is the limitations of that approach? Yeah? Because probably voluntary licenses will not solve the access to medicine problem.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, as I said, we are very small, and our leverage is not that big. But there are many countries that support us very strongly, and that, in WHO and in WHO discussions, there is always some room for, especially when the pharmaceutical industry gets this amount of pressure, they are always, they do many things, right? But they don't do enough. This is true. So this is one way, it's a compromise solution. It's a partnership.
If I would be devil's advocate, I would wonder, why is Switzerland supporting Unitaid or you? Because it's the same Switzerland and the same Germany that has voted against disclosure of full information about cost of development of medicine at the last WHO World Assembly. So it has this, to me, it has two faces, because at the same time it is also a way to maintain the patent system. That is clear.
Yes. So. Yes, I may say, with respect to Switzerland, they didn't oppose the resolution. They agreed with the consensus, although they didn't participate. So there was Spain, Italy, but our basic Southern European countries. It is Spain, my country, and then some other countries like India, Brazil, they joined this resolution. They put it on the table, and the UK was in the discussions. They watered down the resolution, and then they opposed to it. But Switzerland didn't oppose to it. They didn't want to, but they agreed with the consensus, because they didn't. The system of voting in WHO is by, you can call a vote, but usually to try to agree by consensus. But the UK opposed.
Germany.
And Germany, I don't know Germany,
I'm sure.
they criticize strongly. Yes, which we were all surprised because Germany was our champion. I mean, like Germany, like in 2 years ago, I mean, they were very, they were pushing for, access and all that, and suddenly, but we will see how this evolves. Yes.
There's probably a strong pharmaceutical lobby behind this.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
it's countries with a strong pharmaceutical industry are not very supportive of the WHO resolution, and those also poorer European countries that suffer themselves.
Yes, and we have
That's how it is,
genetics.
yeah.
We have our industry is mainly genetics.
Yeah,
The companies that I was working for a genetic manufacturer in Spain. The innovators are the big pharma, UK, US, Northern Europe, and Japan. So, but there is also another issue. I mean, the discussions as well. When you are talking about intellectual property in WHO, many countries believe that this is not the forum to talk about intellectual property rights. That you should be talking about IP rights in WTO or at WIPO or the World Intellectual Property Organization, but not at WTO because WTO is held. But obviously, there are all these implications. So it's a very controversial. It's very interesting, but it's very controversial. There's opinions of all sorts, and